I'll start this video off with a simple question, and that's how intelligent do you actually think you are? It's not a trick question, it's not an insult, and you'll find out why I asked this later. But change, something we all wish to do, but so few of us can actually do. I had a girlfriend 2 years ago, and she'd be constantly at me for my punctuality or the way I speak, and I'd constantly dismiss this. I'd come up with excuses every time I maybe wasn't on time. There was traffic, this, that, the other, or when I spoke, she's being a drama queen. She's deeping it too much. But I look back on it, and she was just wanted what was best for me, and I was acting in a defensive manner. And that's because I was letting my self-conscious self protect my own ego. Everybody has this thing called a self-serving bias, and it's where your subconscious mind feels attacked or under threat, say an argument, or you're getting asked to change. Your mind sees it as a threat, so it goes into panic mode, and the rational side of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, it immediately defends your brain like a lawyer. It defends your ego, it defends your character, and it explains why when somebody asks us to change or maybe says something we disagree with, we act out accordingly because we feel under threat. And the problem is with this loop is that feeds into your own ego, it feeds into your own delusions, which is why I asked you at the start, how intelligent do you actually think you are? Because I can guarantee that most of you probably said above average intelligence, but that's not possible because that would be the new average. And it's not an insult at all. I don't mean it in an insulting way. I just wanted to display how the self-serving bias can actually present itself. Have you ever found a time where your friend is in a situation and you give him advice, and when you're in that same situation, you act how he acts, not on the advice that you gave him? Again, that's your own self-serving bias because you're not acting rationally. You'd probably say, oh, it's a different situation, or maybe it's deeper than what he was going through, but it's not true. That's just the lies that your mind feeds you. And that's why it's so hard to change, is because your mind is constantly defending yourself from your wrongful actions. So the first step that you can take towards change is by challenging that. Anytime you get a thought that might scare you or put you in that fight or flight mode, you need to challenge it instantly. You need to challenge that subconscious part of your body and break the cycle. Because if you feed into your own delusions, then you're not going to get anywhere, because your behavior will always be justified in your mind, when in reality, it's not justified. And it takes a lot to be able to do that. Not because you're blind to what you're doing, but because you're scared to death of looking at the faults in yourself. Everybody is. Nobody wants to look at themselves and go, I'm not the person I want to be. But it's true. Everybody needs change. No one's a perfect person, and you need to strive to be the best person you can. You need to try and negate that self-serving bias as much as possible and look into yourself to be able to do that. Even when people tell you what you need to do to change, it's still all you. You need to be insightful in what they say to you. You need to look at it with a level-headed view, not the view of the biased mind. You need to look at it from their perspective. A lot of people get emotional when they're arguing, and that's because they don't see the other side. Even though it might be rational and it might be right in some ways, their mind doesn't allow them to see that because they're in a constant state of defense. So when somebody tells you you need to change or disagrees with you, put yourself in their shoes. I know it's easier said than done, but you really need to try and empathize with them in that situation and get what they're getting at. And if you ever tell yourself a lie, you need to go, why am I so defensive when I told myself this? Change is an explosion. It's not an implosion. You need to look within to change, and you are the only person that can possibly fight that bias within yourself. It's a battle in your own mind, which is an extremely hard thing to win. If you have the desire and the motivation to change, then you can absolutely do it. You just need to look into your own mind and pick the flaws out in yourself, which is daunting. It is a very tall task. But the positives far outweigh the negatives in that situation, because in looking at yourself and your own shortcomings, you can build on that and you can become the better person that you strive to be. Thank you for watching, and I hope you fight that self-serving bias, and I hope you win. I hope you become the man that, or woman that you so desperately want to be.